So welcome back to Beyond the Ceremony. I'm very excited because today I'm joined by not one, but two guests in the studio, my first duo. So welcome to the lovely Huw and Nia from Seren Celebrants.
Hi.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Hi guys, thank you for being here. It's lovely to have you. And you aren't just business partners, you're actually life partners too. Your husband and wife.
We are. Yeah, we've been married for 13 years this year.
Amazing. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Lovely stuff. Okay, so as you know from Beyond the Ceremony, we tackle kind of a different subject each week. Some weeks we'll talk to previous students and previous graduates of AMC. And the great thing is the fact that you guys are AMC graduates is one thing that we'll talk about today. But also, exactly like I've just mentioned, I want to talk about what it's like working as a duo, because it is something that's quite unusual in the celebrant world. You see it all the time with, photographers, and you get photographers that are quite often friends or husband and wife duos, but actually I haven't seen many celebrants that work in pairs. So I guess let's start by taking it back to the very beginning. So can you kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about Seren Celebrants as a whole?
Sure. Well, I can take the bit about how it all started. We went round for dinner with some friends, and we were in the middle of, the main course, and one of them looked at me and said, "We've got a question to ask you." All right, okay. We want you to marry us. So we just looked at each other, what on earth does that mean? I think you mentioned at the time the sort of Joey from Friends,
Yeah,
scenario.
of course, yeah.
And we sort of left it at there. But handing over to Nia, she was like a dog with a bone, and within about 2 or 3 days, she said, "Do you know what? We can do this." And so, so you did all the research, didn't you?
Yeah, neither of us had even heard of a celebrant before. We were both practising solicitors
Yes,
at the time.
amazing. Wow.
Which we didn't really enjoy. We both had a sort of bit of a creative side to us, and the thought of sitting behind a desk for the rest of our working years was a bit kind of...
Yeah, I should qualify that. I'm still a working solicitor part-time. But as Nia said, we both sort of got... both the right and the left-hand side of the brains are working, and both got sort of creative sides to us. So we were looking for a different avenue, and this sort of just fell into our laps, really. So we weren't looking for it specifically at the time, but once Nia had looked into what a celebrant was and sort of how you achieve that, it sounded so interesting and sort of plays on the creative side. There's the performance side of things, but also the people side of things. You get to meet some incredible, fascinating characters.
Yeah, of course.
So that's sort of the embryo of how it all started.
Wow, so those friends of yours then, they're to thank for this whole business.
They are, and they're still not married, actually.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So then what happened? Was it one of you they asked, or did they say they wanted both of you to be the ones to lead their ceremony?
I think they asked me initially.
Yeah.
So we'd got to know them through me initially, and but are both very good friends with them now. But it just turns out that when we researched it, when we looked into what a celebrant was, it sort of fitted, the hat fitted for both of us.
Something that you both liked.
Yeah.
So then from that moment, what happened next? You, I guess, researched how to actually do it for real. So you say they didn't actually end up having their wedding ceremony?
They haven't had it yet. No. They're still together.
Yeah,
very happy.
they're still together. Yeah.
But yeah, they haven't had it yet. So we looked into it, and we had the discussion, because ultimately anyone in theory can be a celebrant.
Yeah,
of course. You don't have to do any training.
No.
But having researched it and discussed it, we were both very clear. We want to do the training.
Yes.
We want to have that qualification. We want to do it properly or not at all. So that's where we looked into it and started looking at the different providers, and eventually decided that AMC was the right one for us.
Wow. So this was then while you were both, like you say, working as solicitors. So how did you manage working in quite a stressful job as well? Like that's not like something that's just an easy 9 to 5 that you just rock up at work and I imagine leave everything there. That's quite a full-on stressful career to then have alongside then studying. How did you kind of manage juggling both?
I guess the best thing for us was that we could do it online in our own time, rather than having to go to a residential where we were there for 3 days and had to arrange childcare, time off work. We just worked around our own commitments, evenings, weekends, bit in lunch break kind of thing. And the flexibility of that was what appealed to us, I think.
Yeah.
And I think, talking about going to do the training in the first place. Anything we do, we want to do it to the best of our abilities.
Of course, yeah.
So we were, once we started the training, that was it. We were kind of full steam ahead then, and just wanted to get it done and do it well.
Oh my gosh. So from that kind of idea that your friend had, first suggested to you, to then actually doing it for real, once you started doing the training, was there like ever a bit of, rivalry between the two of you? Was there ever that one of you really excelled in one area and one of you, needed the other one to help out? Because it's such, it's something that I imagine was quite new for both of you. How did you then both find tackling that at the same time? Because I guess for me, when I trained, if I was struggling with it, I'd go to my husband and be like, oh, I'm finding this bit really hard. And, we'd have that kind of conversation. Whereas I guess when you're both in that, that's quite a tricky situation.
Yeah, I'm sure we had different journeys during the training, but ultimately the destination is always the same. I think the training is what you make of it. And, for example, watching a lot of the videos, that I perhaps haven't got the patience but Nia had, whereas Nia wanted to really sort of immerse herself in them, whereas I absolutely loved the pressure of training for the live ceremony. I loved the access to the document bank so that you can have different ideas from there. So I think that's it. I think everyone's training will be different, just like every wedding is different, every funeral is different. Everyone's experience of the training will be completely different, and you get out of it as much as you put into it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess as well, when you were doing that training, exactly like you said, we talk to our students all the time and say how important it has to reach out to your peers and connect with your peers and have that support. So I guess as well, there'll be bits that, like you say, Huw, that you found you really loved one part and Nia found that she really loved another. And did you both train just in weddings, or did you look at funerals and namings as well? What was it that you both trained in initially?
We signed up, and we both signed up for the weddings and the namings.
Yeah.
At the time, I thought funerals, that's a completely different. I hadn't been to many funerals. No. Obviously, weddings sound so exciting.
Yeah, of course.
So we both signed up for weddings and namings, completed the weddings course first, and then we attended a funeral locally.
Yeah. So the story is, I've got to be as sensitive as possible here, but yeah, we all, as we get older, and I'm much older than the two of you, obviously, but you go to more and more funerals.
Yeah.
But what I'd sort of spotted was a lot of repetition, and the same people doing them over and over again. And we went to a friend of ours' mum's funeral, and it was perfectly pleasant, but very, very generic. And at one point, one of the family members, he got their name wrong.
Oh, wow.
And I went home that night, and I said to Nia, I have got to do the funerals. There has to be a better way. This is your last chance to have your story told.
Yeah.
And we've got these generic things, and everyone's saying, oh, it was a lovely service. But this is the last opportunity to tell that person's story, and whether they're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, there's decades and decades of experiences and memories and achievements. So that's how it came about. So I went home and I signed up to the funeral straight away.
Wow.
And completed it ASAP. And as soon as I'd qualified, I was working on them.
Yeah, you were ready to start doing funerals. That's amazing. And I think exactly like you say, I found that in my experience of talking to people who have qualified as funeral celebrants, a lot of that comes from personal experience. I think that tends to be a driving factor of what it is that makes people want to do funerals. And I think for me, I'd trained in wedding ceremonies and namings exactly like you guys first, and I'd done that for a few years, and then I went through a personal grief, and it was of a friend of mine, and I remember the importance of making sure her service was perfect and every detail was thought about. And exactly like you say, Huw, to then offer something generic that wouldn't have been right for her would have just been horrible. So that was then the factor for me that made me go, yeah, do you know what, I'm going to use that and help future families in exactly the same way. So had you already qualified in your weddings, and you'd been doing weddings for a while when you then went and did the funeral qualification, or did you do them alongside?
I can't remember the exact timeline, because our story is that we both completed the course in the summer, and obviously you're then sort of available to hire.
Yeah.
But I think we had one wedding throughout the rest of that year. We're going back 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
So from the September to the January, we only had one wedding.
Yeah.
So I think it was during that period I thought, well, I'll do the funerals as well.
Yeah.
And I remember us having a discussion at some point during that, how we made the right choice here. because where are the bookings coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
But you've got to be careful what you wish for, because as soon as that January hit, well, suddenly the bookings started coming
season,
in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it hasn't really stopped from there. We've been pretty busy from that point. So there was a bit of an overlap, and we found that Nia is sort of the first port of call for weddings, and I'm the first port of call for funerals. Yeah. But then if I'm booked and vice versa, we swap over. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then were you still working as solicitors at the time when you qualified? Like, how did you feel ready? When did you know was the moment to kind of make the switch to go from working as solicitors to then becoming celebrants full time?
Gradual reduction in working hours. So I think we were quite realistic about things and didn't want to make that massive stop and rely on income from celebrancy straight away.
Of course.
So I think I went down to 3 days a week to start with, and so we're both involved in various other things. So we always had that extra source of income as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Because you can never be quite sure, can you?
No,
what's going to happen. So we both still work part-time in a couple of other different things. So I think it was important to be realistic about that at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think exactly like you said, Huw, those bookings for weddings especially aren't immediate. They're kind of, 12 months, 18 months, sometimes 2 years down the line. Yes, you do get the occasional one that comes in last minute. But I think when you're first starting out, you have these visions of, right, I'm going to qualify and then I'm going to start working straight away. And actually, the ceremonies tend to be, the following year. So it takes that time to kind of build that up. And I think that's the thing that's important to note for people who are maybe thinking about doing it as a career, that actually doing it alongside what you're already doing, if you've got that flexibility in your current work, that's really important, isn't it? To make sure that you can kind of build it up, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. You can never tell how successful you're going to be. And I think we were talking about the timeline then. I think from that first, we did the one wedding in the September. And then for 2023, then we took 7 bookings.
Amazing.
And then for 2024, then it went up to 38.
Brilliant.
So some of them had booked sort of beginning of 23 for 24. But if we'd have stopped working or completely cut down 2023, that wouldn't have been sensible at all.
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked. So I guess you had to do that kind of juggle of both for a little while, but then once it started building momentum, it's kind of like the snowball effect, isn't it? It just kind of gathers, and the more people see you doing it, the more people recommend you, etc.
I think that's right. I think you can't, Instagram and social media is great, but word of mouth has come up with so many bookings for us. There's no replacement for seeing someone in the flesh, and it's the same with live music or whatever. If you've got to see someone in the person to really know what the vibe is that they bring and what qualities they can bring to your wedding. So so the momentum has built, and then I think this year is 40. 41,
45.
45. There we are.
Oh, there you go. Nia's the numbers
as you can see, Nia does all the admin, so we'll talk about what each of us bring to it. Nia does all that. So 45 this year, and then already bookings for 2026, 2027.
Amazing.
So yeah.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about that then. Day to day, obviously you just mentioned Nia does the admin. Is that how it works? Do you kind of, working as a duo, does it literally just mean 2 celebrants under one roof, or does it mean that you run it as more of like a company where you have different roles?
I think we definitely have different roles.
You're so good at knowing who to answer as well. I love that. It's like where you look at each other like, you take this one.
No, we definitely have different roles. As I said, Nia is admin. Nia has the initial calls, does all the booking forms, does all the contracts, does all the invoicing, all of those things.
Yeah.
But like pretty well everything we've ever done, I get to do just the fun bit. So, but otherwise, a lot of it is teamwork.
Yeah.
So, for example, if one of us writes a script, the other one proofreads it, or says, "Well, have you thought about trying this?" Or we'll put a little note in there. So look, there's a really good story in the couple's questionnaire, but can you make it funnier? That sort of thing. So all of our scripts are sort of teamwork, just to give it that second eye, and I think that's a real plus point for us, because if you're just a lone ranger, you haven't got that person to bounce
Yeah,
ideas
exactly.
off.
Or if you have, they sit there looking bored on the settee, like my husband when I read my script. Or he'll know the couples by the nicknames. So like last year I had two that were just obsessed with bunny rabbits, and he was like, "Is this the rabbit couple?" I was like, "Yeah, that's it." And that's the thing. He's a teacher, so he definitely does the proofreading for me, but in a different way, more to spell check.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing. And what would you say are maybe some of the benefits about working with another celebrant, like alongside, you know, having each other? Would you say it is those extra ideas, or are there any other things that you can think of that are, you know, real benefits of working as a team?
I think the extra idea is obviously we've got sort of twice as much or different things that have happened in each ceremony. So something has happened, you know, whether that's something good or something that could have gone better. We've got twice as much to learn from.
Exactly.
And we always have a little debrief after each ceremony, whether it's a wedding or a funeral, or if we, you know, as we get into wedding season now, we are both out every single Saturday. So we'll come back home, reconvene at whatever time, have a glass of wine and say, right, you go first, I'll go second, talk about the good things, talk about the bad things, talk about things we could have done differently. And so it's a constant learning curve. And I think that's the key to being a successful celebrant. You never take anything for granted. You never drop your standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you always look to try and improve.
Yeah, and you're learning something all the time, aren't you? And I think that's the thing, exactly like you say. After every ceremony I go to, there's always something I learn, and I think, oh, I'm going to do that slightly differently next time, or that worked really well. I love that. I'm going to make sure that I do that again. Like, I think that's probably something that works really well. And then how is it? Like, how do you manage to switch off if you're living together, working together, you're both doing the same role? Do you literally just live and, you know, breathe weddings, or do you get to have, like, you know, do you still get that downtime where you can both switch off and just be husband and wife, or are you always business partners?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. One thing we have started doing is booking a holiday.
Yeah, nice.
So once a year, week or 10 days in August, and that is blocked out. Pay for it as much as possible in advance, and therefore that's in the diary.
Yeah.
The kids know we're going. We know we're going to have that week or 10 days, just the four of us. And I think that's crucial. You've got that something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And when you're there, you get that proper time to switch off. Generally, at this time of year, it is quite relentless.
I bet.
When we've just done in 4 days 6 ceremonies between the two of us.
Wow.
And obviously it's not just those 4 days where you're doing the ceremonies with all the travelling, with delivering the services. We also offer an MC service as well, so you can be there till 9, 10, 11 at night. But it's also meeting with the couples. It's also writing the scripts, proofreading the scripts, bouncing the ideas back and forth, and correspondence with the couples. WhatsApp, we set up a WhatsApp group for every couple, and we're bouncing back and forth. So the number of hours that goes into each ceremony is quite crazy when you actually think about it. I'm sure you've had exactly the same experience.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what the average per wedding is. I'm not
think
sure,
probably 20 to 30 when I last looked, and it really does depend. And as you guys all know, you'll get some couples that it's 30 plus sometimes, and you'll get some couples that it's 10 or 15 because it's, you know, they're quite straightforward and they're happy with what you write. There's no changes on the script. It's, you know, it does really vary, but I think exactly like you say, it's not just what you see on the day. I think that's probably a quarter to a third of the work. I think most of it is in the run up and everything that you do to prepare beforehand.
And it's the same with funerals as well. You know, you might have one where they want something very straightforward, and they live locally, and the crematorium is local to us, or they might live away. They might want something as close to the limit as they've got, and you might spend having 19 or 20 hours between the meetings, etc. So every service is completely different. I think that's the take home from this industry so far. Every single service there is something different.
What's it like compared to being solicitors? Is it a more varied career?
Be careful now,
that's it.
There's a lot of transferable skills, you know, a lot of similarities in terms of you know, a lot of writing, a lot of reading,
of course,
a lot of empathy, understanding, speaking to couples then at really stressful times of their lives, even though it's a lot happier usually than what we've done before. But we actually work together as solicitors as well.
Did you? I was going to ask that.
So it is handy to have somebody there to vent to, I guess, if you're feeling stressed, and somebody who understands. So it's very different, a lot more fun.
Yeah.
A lot more, a lot more creativity involved. But in some ways it is quite similar.
Yeah. I don't think we'd be able to do what we do now without our legal careers.
Having had that background.
I think, we're both very grateful for that. We've obviously got very understanding employers who've allowed us to reduce our hours as this side of the business has grown. I suppose the main difference for me is that when I was sat at that desk, and this is why no one can get me on the phone, that's why they have to phone Nia these days, but when that phone used to ring, and it could ring 15, 20, 25 times a day, it was always a problem.
Right, yeah.
Whereas now with the couples or the families we're meeting, we're offering solutions either at the happiest time of their lives or the ability to make the saddest times of their life just that tiny bit easier, and just take one thing away from them at the worst time of their lives. So that I would say would be the main difference. Yeah,
that's something that's really, really nice. And what would you say in terms of celebrancy? Have you got like a favourite area of celebrancy? Would you say, Nia, is it weddings for you, or do you really love the namings, or do you really love the kind of consultant stage? Like, do you have a favourite part of celebrancy?
It's definitely the weddings.
Yeah.
I've always loved weddings.
Really?
And, always wanted to be able to work in the wedding industry, but didn't have a skill like a florist or a stationery or cakes or anything like that. So I kind of always dismissed it.
Yeah.
I haven't got anything to bring to the table until this came along. So, just being caught up in that bubble of the happiest days of people's lives, and just to see, when the bride is getting ready in the morning, and just everyone is so happy around them, and to be able to be a part of that is just, it just sort of makes me giddy. Really.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? When you get to a wedding, you think, wow, this is my office for today. Like, wow. Like, when you look around, it never gets old. I think that feeling. It's very exciting. What about you, Huw?
For me, it's of course, it's very hard to compare the two situations, but I did a wedding on Saturday down in Gellivar Woodland Retreat. Beautiful venue. Shout out to Rhys and Lauren, who were absolutely amazing. But they sent me a lovely message the next day, and I texted them back to say I just feel so humble and honoured that was working.
It
was the most amazing day with the most amazing people, and the sun was out. And by the end of it, I just thought, this is my job. And they were so lovely, and I'd hope that we catch up with them again, because by the end of the day, I just felt like a guest. And I was so welcomed. It was amazing. But on the flip side, with the funerals, I don't think it's for everyone, because that, and we talked about the training before. How can you train someone to walk through that door for the first time when they're totally bereft? So I don't think it is for everyone. I think it is a special skill that celebrants are able to bring. Funeral celebrants are able to bring to the table, where you go in and you don't know what is going to await you. But to be able to sort of help them through those few days or the weeks before the service is a real honour. I find it an absolute privilege to be able to tell these people's stories, because it's the last chance to tell that story, and I do consider it a genuine honour.
It really is. And I think that's the thing, when you're sat there, in that family meeting, you're hearing these stories, so many inspirational stories about people's lives. Like, just some of the things that you learn in those meetings is incredible. I mean, obviously I'm a hopeless romantic, and I love to hear couple stories, and I love to hear how they met and how they fell in love. But when you're hearing some of these life stories of, sometimes people who have reached the age of 100 and they've just lived this incredible life, and to be able to sit there, and that is, your job to listen and interpret these stories and turn them into a celebration is like you say, such a privilege. I think it is.
I agree. And I think that the love stories, especially when people are saying that, they've been together for 55, 60, 65 years, that's sort of really why you do it. But at the same time, I'm a great believer that whatever path you've gone down, everyone deserves that day.
Absolutely.
Everyone deserves that day where they get their story told, and they're given a fitting, respectful service. So that's what we try and provide.
100%. I love that. So what would you say then is next for you guys as a Celebrant team? Have you got, any ambitions or any bucket list ceremonies that you want to deliver, or do you just want to keep absolutely nailing these life celebrations and doing what you do best?
I think we're just so grateful to be where we are now, that we couldn't have imagined 2 years ago being in this position.
Really,
at the end of last year, we won the Welsh National Wedding Awards.
Amazing.
Celebrants.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that was, again, couldn't have even imagined that a year previously. So at the moment, there are obviously venues we'd like to work at, places we'd like to go. We haven't yet done a destination wedding, so that would be on the bucket list, I think. But at the moment, I think all we can do is be grateful and hope to carry on the way we're going.
Yeah, I think we do. We feel very lucky, very blessed that we're at the place now that we wanted to be when we first started.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, there are times you think, how am I going to, there's not enough hours in the day. But this is what we wanted. So you do have to be careful what you wish for, but it's exactly what we wanted. But I think for me, it's just keep improving. Every single service we deliver, you never drop the standards.
Yeah.
You always give everyone, whatever their story, whatever their journey, you give them the same commitment.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that. That's inspired me with another question. When you say there's not enough hours in the day, that is something that I think, you don't see those hidden hours. You don't see those put the kids to bed and get the laptop out and off we go. And I guess especially the fact that both of you are doing the same job, you probably do have a lot of evenings where you'll carry on working. How have you found the adjustment going from being employed to running a business? How has that worked? And what are kind of some of the challenges that you've faced?
I think that the phrase is, find a job you love, you never work another day in your life. And I think that is how we'd sort of equate it, really. Ultimately, it's all for a common goal. Ultimately, everything we do is for the kids. I know that sounds very cliche, but ultimately, they are our life, and we work these hours. And but people do say to me, friends of mine, how do you fit it all in? Well, you get up a bit earlier, you stay up a bit later. There's always ways to do it. Whilst at the same time, you have to find that time to focus on each other, to focus on the children, have that family time. Otherwise, you'd burn yourselves out. So I think that's where we're a good sort of bit of ballast between us, where we say, do you know what, we've got to have a break here. We've got to go for a walk up the mountain. We've got to have a glass of wine. We've got to turn our phones off. And I think that's where we do work well as a team to make sure that happens. Otherwise, it would become repetitive, would become a chore because you're just churning it out, and I think that's when you'd lose the quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to have that, come at it with a fresh perspective every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you ever do ceremonies together? Is it always just one of you, or do you ever go and you'll lead a ceremony together?
We have done,
we've done
for friends.
Mainly for friends. I mean, ultimately, if someone said, you know what, we want that mix of husband and wife, then people are very welcome to book both of us. But we've done 4 or 5 for good friends. Yeah. And I think it works really well. I obviously make sure I get all the good funny punchlines, but
in the script he's always highlighting it. That's
I'll take that bit, please.
There's an element of truth to that, but no, we have done a few, and we've worked at funerals together, or we go up and just add some extra support to the family if we both happen to be free. So yeah, where possible, we enjoy working together.
That's lovely. And if a booking came in, say I'm a bride, I'm getting married next year, and I find your website and I inquire, how do you decide who is the celebrant for me?
It would generally be me for the first port of call. If somebody wanted a man, then we have one available.
Here we go. Look what I've got back here.
And there are fewer male celebrants.
Yeah, there are.
So,
absolutely.
If somebody wanted that, then that's something we can provide, obviously. Yeah. I think we just fell into it that I would take the lead. I think maybe you were doing the funeral training at the time. But then if I'm already booked, then Huw will take the booking. And then, like I said, we work on the scripts together. And it would just be one of us on the day then.
But there's no obligation to book either of us if they want a discovery call with both of us together. And
that's nice.
And they want to be brutal and say, all right, after that we'll have you. Please.
Yeah,
that's no problem. We're not precious. We're not.
My gosh!
It's our business, isn't it? Whichever one of us is working, it's business for both of us.
Absolutely. And I bet being able to have that flexibility where you can say yes when you're already booked is lovely, because that's one thing I really struggle with, where a date's been taken and I get the inquiry in and it's at a dream venue and the couples sound just like my kind of people, and then I have to say I'm really sorry, I'm booked. So being able to have that flexibility, I guess. And does it happen where on the call they're like, oh, we'll have a think about it, and then you're both waiting with bated breath to see who they've picked? Does that ever happen? Because I just picture that happening in your kitchen.
That's more you're the one who after a call is there within about 3 minutes. Oh, they haven't messaged. they clearly hate me. And I'm
that's me, Nia.
Let's give them half an hour at least. But well, I'm a lot more relaxed about it, and I think when you have that call, it's as much about them deciding if you're the right celebrant for them, but also you deciding are they the right people to work with.
Yeah,
I think there has to be that relationship where you're going to have the process has got to be fun. I think because unlike with a registrar where they turn up on the day and do the same thing as they've done at the last one, with this it's a journey, and from that minute you've booked, you become friends almost, and you learn so much about them. And as I said, we have this WhatsApp group which is pinging at all times of the night, where people have sort of sat bolt upright and thought, I've thought of something, I've got to text Nia, I've got to text Huw. So I think it has become a real journey, and I think that's what we try and say sell is the wrong word, but try to explain to our couples that the process is going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of laughs, and then when you get there on the day, we've had a meeting in person with them already, but if not two, we try and see them before the big day as well. But when you turn up on the day, it's like seeing friends. Yeah. And you want, and I think it makes you want to do an even better job for them when you have that personal connection.
Oh, absolutely. It's like that, just that extra thing that you go, I want to do a good job for you because I know how much you deserve it and I know what you're like, and you get to know them, don't you? And you kind of want to reflect that.
You know the troubles they've had to get there. And a lot of them won't actually go into the script, but you know the journey they've been on to get to this place and how much it means to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say then is your favourite thing about the job, and what's something that you find hard?
That's a really good question. I think the favourite thing is just seeing how happy those couples are from a wedding point of view. Obviously, seeing how happy they are, and that we have contributed in some way towards that happiness, and just be part of the happiest day of their lives. I think the hardest part then is what we've talked about, the bits that people don't see behind the scenes, is the hours of writing. Sometimes you have that sort of creative block, don't you? And you think,
absolutely.
I've got to leave this for a bit. I'll have to come back to it another time. And then it always comes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's just all that what people don't see behind the scene.
Absolutely.
I suppose to take a look at it from a funeral perspective, the best part is certainly the feedback you get afterwards, where people say, do you know what, you've really helped us, you've really provided a service that we needed at the time, and you made it just a tiny bit easier, and that means the absolute world. From the hard point of view, I suppose, ultimately, with a funeral, it's less about choosing the right one, because it happens in such a short space of time, and ultimately you meet people from different aspects of life, people that you wouldn't necessarily hang out with in real life, and so it can be hard if your script is picked apart a bit more detail than normal, or if people you do the service, you think, do you know what, I did a really good job there, you never hear from them again. So a little bit what we were talking about earlier, that we are still sensitive souls, because I think when you care about it, you do put your heart and soul into it. And I think some people still think of it as you're just providing a service, you're getting paid for it, you're providing a service, whereas actually you've done more than that. You've really invested so many hours. But of course, people don't realise that. And why should they?
No, exactly.
Why should they think you've spent 20 hours on that funeral? They've paid you good money, and so why should they be writing you a thank you card? They've had no obligation to do it.
Absolutely.
But most people, I think, in this world, 99% of people are lovely. And you realise that in this job, both with weddings and funerals, 99% of people in the world are just...
So how do you balance family life alongside working weekends? Because my children at the moment are 3 and 2, so they're not quite at school yet, but from September my eldest will be at school 5 days a week. So I'm now thinking, next year I don't want to do as many Saturdays. How do you find that balance, especially if you're both working weekends?
It is tricky. We're very lucky, we've got a massive support network. Both families are local to us. Amazing. Kids love going to grandparents and cousins and getting spoiled. I won't lie, it is tricky some weekends, especially over the summer, where there are sort of 6 Saturdays in a row where we're both working. But our kids are 10 and 11 now, so they understand a little bit more that if they want to go on a nice holiday, this is how we're going to be able to have that holiday is by working these weekends.
But I think it's so important that you get that holiday into the diary.
That's such a good point when you said that. It's so true.
It's been crucial, because they're 10 and 11, as much as they're a little bit more independent, this is the time where they need us most. I think they're sort of transitioning. Our daughter's just gone to secondary school, and she's gone over one summer from being my little girl to sort of on the verge of being a teenager.
Wow.
And the change has been unbelievable. So I'm not coping with it very well.
No.
But I think, I still want to have that, that dad-daughter relationship with her. And so you have to invest the time in them as well.
Yeah.
We can't just, be blinkered and think things are going well. Let's keep, you have to have that balance. I think it's absolutely crucial.
And I think when it's your own business, it's so hard to say no.
Yeah.
You get kind of addicted, don't you, to those bookings? And when you get a day and you look in the diary and you're free, you're like, oh yeah, great. And then actually you're like, no, I need to make sure that I'm keeping that balance in check as well.
And I think on the flip side as well, though, now that we are self-employed, I pick up our son from school every day.
Lovely.
I didn't do that before.
No, exactly.
We can go to sports days and whatever, parents' evenings, we can go to them. We just have to be flexible. We just adjust things around. So while we are busy a lot of Saturdays, I'm always there. I'm in the house when they come home from school. They might not want to see me, but
straight up.
That's the thing.
But, we've got that flexibility now. That we can do things in the week that we couldn't when we were full-time employed.
Absolutely. And I think it's even just things like their birthdays. That birthday is in the diary, although I nearly took a booking for my son's fourth birthday this summer, and then I was like, oh no, hang on, it's Woody's birthday.
Yeah, we had an inquiry a couple of years ago, and she was adamant that was not happening.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is one thing in our house that is not allowed to happen. Birthdays are left free.
Absolutely. But how lovely that because you are your own bosses, you can do that, and you can say, no, we're not ever going to work on the kids' birthdays, or we're always going to take that holiday. Like, I think that's what's something that is so important to remember, because especially when you're just starting out, you do want to say yes to everything. And yes, you may have a year or two where you have to build it up, but then eventually it's good to make sure that you are allowing yourself those breaks.
I think so. I think you have to recognise the value of that family time.
Absolutely.
It's all very well to say another wedding would bring in X pounds, or another funeral would bring in Y pounds. You cannot put a price on that time, and they grow up so fast. There's some amazing statistic that when they're 18, you've already spent 90% of your time with them. Something horrendous.
Heartbreaking, isn't it? It's like, oh my god.
So this is it. This isn't the dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
This is it. This is your chance to have that time with them and build that relationship with them that's going to last hopefully many decades to come.
For your lifetime.
So you said you can't put a price on that. The value of that is more than taking an extra one just for the sake of it. So
but they are they are now getting interested in the business as well.
I bet.
Especially our daughter, she's always like, what did they wear, can I see a photo? Oh, she looks so lovely. And our son had a ceremony last year where the couple wanted to they were big fans of Mandalorian.
Oh wow.
And he's watched it and he gave me some quotes and stuff.
So
they are now getting to the age where they're getting a little bit sort of interested and
and hopefully one day, the business is called Seren Celebrants. Our daughter is Seren, so that's where it comes from. So hopefully one day they'll both be involved, but probably her more than him. She's the performer, if you like, and nice. They're both taking an interest, and hopefully it can be a family business in the future.
Oh, I love that. Maybe there'll be a sibling duo instead of husband and wife duo.
Yeah,
he'll do the admin, she'll do the ceremonies. So how do you balance family life alongside working weekends? Because my children at the moment are 3 and 2, so they're not quite at school yet, but from September my eldest will be at school 5 days a week. So I'm now thinking, next year I don't want to do as many Saturdays. How do you find that balance, especially if you're both working weekends?
It is tricky. We're very lucky. We've got a massive support network. Both families are local to us.
Amazing.
Kids love going to grandparents and cousins, getting spoiled. I won't lie, it is tricky some weekends, especially over the summer where there are sort of 6 Saturdays in a row where we're both working. But our kids are 10 and 11 now, so they understand a little bit more that if they want to go on a nice holiday, this is how we're going to be able to have that holiday is by working these weekends.
But I think it's so important that you get that holiday into the diary.
That's such a good point when you said that. It's so true.
It's been crucial, because they're 10 and 11, as much as they're a little bit more independent, this is the time where they need us most. I think they're sort of transitioning. Our daughter's just gone to secondary school, and she's gone over one summer from being my little girl to sort of on the verge of being a teenager.
Wow.
And the change has been unbelievable. So I'm not coping with it very well.
No.
But I think, I still want to have that, that dad-daughter relationship with her, and so you have to invest the time in them as well.
Yeah.
We can't just, be blinkered and think things are going well, let's keep, you have to have that balance. I think it's absolutely crucial.
And I think when it's your own business, it's so hard to say no.
Yeah.
You get kind of addicted, don't you, to those bookings? And when you get a day and you look in the diary and you're free, you're like, oh yeah, great. And then actually you're like, no, I need to make sure that I'm keeping that balance in check as well.
And I think on the flip side as well, though, rather now that we are self-employed, I pick up our son from school every day.
Lovely.
I didn't do that before.
No, exactly.
We can go to sports days and whatever, parents' evenings, we can go to them. We just have to be flexible. We just adjust things around. So while we are busy a lot of Saturdays, I'm always there. I'm in the house when they come home from school. They might not want to see me, but
straight up.
That's the thing.
But we've got that flexibility now.
Yeah.
That we can do things in the week that we couldn't when we were full-time employed.
Absolutely. And I think it's even just things like their birthdays. That birthday is in the diary, although I nearly took a booking for my son's fourth birthday this summer, and then I was like, oh no, hang on, it's Woody's birthday.
Yeah, we had an inquiry a couple of years ago, and she was adamant
that
it's not happening.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is one thing in our house that is not allowed to happen. Birthdays are left free.
Absolutely. But how lovely that because you are your own bosses, you can do that, and you can say, no, we're not ever going to work on the kids' birthdays, or we're always going to take that holiday. Like, I think that's what's something that is so important to remember, because especially when you're just starting out, you do want to say yes to everything. And yes, you may have a year or two where you have to build it up, but then eventually it's good to make sure that you are allowing yourself those breaks.
I think
as well.
so. I think you have to recognise the value of that family time.
Absolutely.
It's all very well to say another wedding would bring in X pounds, or another funeral would bring in Y pounds. You cannot put a price on that time, and they grow up so fast. There's some amazing statistic that when they're 18, you've already spent 90% of your time with them. Something horrendous.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? It's like, oh my god.
So this is it. This isn't the dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
This is it. This is your chance to have that time with them and build that relationship with them that's going to last hopefully many decades to come.
For your lifetime.
So you said you can't put a price on that. The value of that is more than taking an extra one just for the sake of it. So
but they are they are now getting interested in the business as well.
I bet.
Especially our daughter, she's always like, what did they wear, can I see a photo? Oh, she looks so lovely. And our son had a ceremony last year where the couple wanted to they were big fans of Mandalorian.
Oh wow.
And he's watched it and he gave me some quotes and stuff.
So nice.
So they are now getting to the age where they're getting a little bit sort of interested and
and hopefully one day, the business is called Seren Celebrants. Our daughter is Seren, so that's where it comes from. So hopefully one day they'll both be involved, but probably her more than him. She's the performer, if you like, and nice they're both taking an interest, and hopefully it can be a family business in the future.
Oh, I love that. Maybe there'll be a sibling duo instead of husband and wife duo.
Yeah,
he'll do the admin, she'll do the ceremonies. Okay, so before we finish then, I always ask my guests this. What's your one piece of advice for anyone who's listening and they're thinking about considering, becoming a celebrant themselves?
Yeah. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I touched upon it earlier, but I think it's that fail to prepare to fail.
Yes.
That's the thing. You can just never drop your standards. So if you've written a script, you think that's a great script, you've then got to read through it 10, 15, 20 times. There's never enough time. So if you've got to get up an hour earlier, if you've got to, what I tend to do is I get to, I know Nia will talk about weddings, with funerals, I make sure I'm at the crematorium 2 hours in advance, and I'm sat in my car going over it and over it with a pen and think, actually, that would work better there. Oh my goodness, I've repeated the word lovely there and there, so I'll change that. Yeah. So you just want to make it perfect and just never be afraid to improve, and also look at yourself. And be very, very critical. That's probably a bit of a harsh word, but critical of your performance, because actually when you're being critical, you're actually improving.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single time.
Yeah, so, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, us as mentors, we find at AMC that when we're giving that, you know, constructive criticism, that feedback, it's never ever a reflection on that person. It's actually, we know what they're capable of, and we know that they can push that bit, or, you know, if they tweak that bit slightly, it's going to elevate their script to the next level. And I think that's the thing, exactly like you say, you learn so much every day in this job, and I think that starts from the training. You learn so much every time you write a new script. So yeah. And what about yourself, Nia?
I would say the job is what you make it, and you have to work hard if you want to, you know, it's not just about completing the training and then going out and getting the bookings. You have got to network, you've got to nail your social media, you've got to get a website, you've got to invest, you know, financially and time wise.
The number of wedding fairs you've done, I've not done one. So that is my worst nightmare. But fair play to Nia, she is away almost every Sunday at different wedding fairs, meeting people, and sometimes she'll come back and say, I've had one conversation. Other times she's already got 3 emails by the time she's at home. So so I do take my hat off to Nia in that department. You know, you've got to have that dedication to keep getting the bookings. You can't just rest on your laurels.
Yeah, they're not just going to fly in.
Absolutely,
you know,
no.
It's got to be about making connections with venues, with other wedding suppliers, word of mouth, getting yourself out there. Otherwise, people are not going to know you exist.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's such a good point. And I think, like you say, the networking is just so vital and so important. And it does pay off. The minute you know, you'll go to these wedding fairs and you might not hear from the couples that you meet on the day for another 6 months, but they'll come back and go, oh, we met you at a wedding fair at that time and now we're ready to book. And exactly like you say, you just got to keep going, haven't you? And Penny always says, who's the head of learning at AMC, she always says, what have you done to work on your business today? Just do one thing a day, even if it's your day off, or, you know, just tell somebody, oh, did you know I'm a celebrant? Or, you know, whatever. And it's always, you know, that always pays off. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much to both of you for coming on. Thank you for being guests. I feel like I could chat to you for hours. This always happens when I have guests on Beyond the Ceremony. But thank you so much for joining me, and all the best for Seren Celebrants for the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much.